For as long as you can remember, legends have been told about the derelict mansion upon the hill that casts a blanket of darkness over the town. The history of the house itself is virtually unknown, and even the town's oldest residents cannot remember the mansion's origin. Being an avid history enthusiast, you embark up the mountain to visit the manor, hoping to shed some light on the backstory of this crumbling fortress of darkness. Spooky's House of Jumpscare Mansion is a horror darling from 2014 and one of the few indie horror games that I have played personally along with Amori. Yeah, I am definitely lame in this regard. I never had a PC till recently, so I was usually relegated to whatever was released on consoles. And thankfully, Spookies did release on the PS4 and Xbox in 2017. Now, that does not mean that I am completely unfamiliar with this game, as I did watch Markiplier's play through the game when it had come out originally. But with what I had just said in mind, I will mainly be talking about the HD renovation today, as that is the one I have played personally. I will, however, reference the original where needed, since there have been quite a bit of changes to this game over its 9-year life cycle. Now, when it comes to horror games, I am a pretty big fan of them when they can actually scare me or keep me on edge. See, I have a rough time with horror games as they can become kind of boring or too much in a short amount of time. But I will say that Spookies is definitely not that case, as this game is really good at keeping that tension going throughout the entire experience as you traverse through the 1,000 rooms, with new specimens being thrown at you pretty regularly. So today I will be going over the game in detail and discussing the flow of the gameplay and the specimens you find inside, along with a ranking at the end. Now, regarding the gameplay of Spookies, it's pretty simple. Try to reach 1,000 rooms without getting mauled or devoured on the way. Sprinting from room to room until you inevitably do reach room 1,000. You'll be able to see your sprint bar underneath your health bar on the HUD. But other than that, there really isn't too much else to talk about on the gameplay aspect. There are a few slight deviations to the gameplay, depending on what specimen you are facing, and the DLCs of this game change up the gameplay quite a bit. However, with that being said, it might be simplistic, but the gameplay can be fairly addictive as you just watch the room number climb up as you fly throughout the rooms. To me, it doesn't really seem like the core gameplay of running from room to room is the main focus, so much as the specimens themselves are the main focus, as they are all greatly varied and will provide a decent amount of challenge as you charge your way through the mansion. Now, the beginning of the game will start out fairly slow. You'll be greeted by Spooky, who seems to be the potential owner of the mansion, and you'll start going from room to room. And for the first 60 floors, you'll not be running into anything but these cute little cardboard cutouts. But once the specimens do start showing up, that is when the game really starts to pick up around floor 60. And with that being said, let us go ahead and jump into the specimens. Specimen 1, also known as just the cardboard cutouts. These guys are pretty simple and will appear from the very start of the game. These are the jump scares of the game for the most part, as they will randomly pop out as you run through the mansion, and will have a higher chance to pop up if you are running. Not too scary, of course, but can be a real nuisance when they pop up as you are being chased by the other specimens, as they can stop you in your tracks. Specimen 2, also known as Gel, is the first real threat of the game, and will appear starting on floor 60 after you read the note that is on the table. This enemy is based off the Lub Glove monsters from Adventure Time. This specimen isn't too bad overall to deal with. He's about as fast as your walking speed and does not hit particularly hard. Overall, a perfect first specimen to deal with as you get used to what the specimen gameplay is like. His unique gimmick, however, is the green puddles of goo on the floor that will slow you down, which can be pretty harrowing to deal with, but overall not too bad, especially if you are able to keep up a good pace from him. This specimen can also float, so he can catch up to you pretty fast in the abyss rooms. Overall, I like his design, pretty simplistic, but it gives off the right amount of creep factor. His death screen, however, is okay, as it is just the screen from the beginning of the game when you open it up, but green instead of red. But the message is pretty unsettling as the specimen essentially tears into and inhabits your body with the quote, "But it's alright, I'm inside you now. We are one, but I am many." Overall, a pretty solid specimen to start off the game with, although his reach chases can be kinda dull, especially since he slows you down when he shows up, and is one of the least frightening monsters to get on a reach chase. Music's pretty solid, however. Specimen 3, the Giant Centipede, or Subject 5, is, well, a giant centipede. It is pretty creepy, but fairly basic, and I've never really been creeped out by bugs or arthropods personally of the sort. So this specimen doesn't really do too much for me personally on a scare factor, but he is fairly speedy and will come out of holes on the ceiling. However, it does not float like Specimen 2, so it won't get an advantage in the Abyss rooms. The specimen will appear starting on room 120, where you will see notes scattered throughout about Subject 5 breaking out of its containment and killing the staff at Generic Labs. Love the name, by the way. Nothing too special going on for this specimen. However, his death screen is pretty fucking rad. After being killed, you wake up to multiple Specimen 3s coming out of the holes and finishing you off with this text popping up. Once in the land of dreams, I thought I could be free, but now the hunger never sleeps. A pretty bone-chilling death, considering how tame the specimen is overall. Music is pretty solid, and I'm not gonna lie, I personally think Specimen 3 is kind of cute. That's probably why he didn't scare me too much personally. Specimen 4, Ringu, a 14th century spirit that is physically based off of Sachiko from the Corpse Party series. Now, the Corpse Party series, if you do not know, is a game series that is pretty off the wall itself. However, the first game in that series is also a really well done horror game that I could easily recommend. Ringo will start to appear on floor 165, which is set in a creepy dark school setting, which will have notes strung around about the classrooms talking about Matsuri and a legend about a spirit that eats students that sneak into class. Funnily enough, you would believe that Specimen 4 is named Specimen 4 because of the number 4 being avoided in Japan because it's pronounced like death. However, the developer confirmed that this was overall just a coincidence. Now, when it comes to her gameplay or her chase, she can phase through walls and float. So the Abyss rooms will be a problem with her, along with rooms that require you to loop around a wall, as she can phase through those walls. Overall, though, she's not too bad to avoid as long as you keep going at a steady pace, and can be pretty easy to avoid. Now, her death screen is pretty creepy, as she will devour you, and the screen will show her holding her stomach and stating, "Hush now, my child, you're safe now." Overall, an interesting specimen, mainly because of her parents, but I do like the music that accompanies her whenever she chases you, as it is a pretty creepy tune. Specimen 5, also known as Bab, that is her name, I promise, is encountered in room 210. Bab is a creature that is a reference to the Silent Hill series, along with the segment that you find her in. She is a humanoid who does not have a face that wields a giant blade, and from checking the notes around the area, it looks like she came from a failed ritual performed in a village, and was subsequently found in the church of a small town. It failed because the sacrifice was not pure. In the original game, before the HD renovation, Bab was pretty slow and easy to avoid, but in the HD renovation, she was sped up a bit and is a larger threat overall, as she can also leave red after images when she walks around, which can stick around room from room, which can be a bit of a surprise, especially as you are in the heat of the chase. Her main gimmick, however, is her creating hallucinations while she chases you, which can easily slip you up if you are not 100% familiar with a certain room layout that you are currently in. Her entry states that she's extremely effective against subjects with mental issues or weak wills. Which, hey, I mean, same. But regardless, it provides a little bit of background on the player character. Her death screen has the screen flashing red along with the text, "Tiny shining holes in the sky. Delicate, perfect emptiness. Black growing absences of life. Cold swarming death, and we shall become them." A decent death screen overall with a pretty creepy message. And that's Specimen 5. Specimen 6. Fuck this guy. Ben the Merchant is a life-size puppet that you'll meet in room 310. Him and the area you find him in is a reference to The Legend of Zelda, with the rooms being very similar looking to the bottom of the well and the Shadow Temple areas of Ocarina of Time, with the music having a very similar feel to it as well, with the merchant's design even being based off of the unsettling look of the Happy Mask salesman. His name Ben and method of killing is also a reference to the infamous Ben Drown creepypasta based around Majora's Mask. A good read that I could easily recommend if you have the time, by the way. You will find notes around his area that will tell the story of a merchant who came to town that sold handmade puppets, but his store got too popular, so the other shopkeepers in a jealous rage threw his puppets into the river, and Ben went after them. The townspeople just sat and watched him thrash around frantically until ultimately Ben the merchant never surfaced again. Years later, the children in the town would begin to go missing, with puppets starting to appear more often in the forest around the river who looked like the missing children. Overall, Ben the Merchant has a very chilling backstory that was quite interesting to read. This specimen is a complete change of pace from the ones before him. Instead of actively chasing you during the chase, he will instead teleport behind you if you take your eyes off of him or if you stare at him for too long. Entering a room while he is pursuing you will require you to immediately turn around or else he will get a free hit in. This guy is a menace, at least to me. I got him the most for my rechases. Even if he was a complete pain in my ass, he is a nice change of pace from the constant running that you have been doing so far, as you will need to be very cognizant of his location at all times and be ready to flip around once he ascends into the air. Fun fact about me, I also have a very large fear of things that chase you once you stop looking at them, so Ben the Merchant really hit my horror sweet spot. Specimen 7. This specimen is very unique, to say the least. Once you enter room 410, you will enter the threshold of consciousness, where you will see a light pink cat. This cat will begin to spout a bit of Jungian philosophy about the mask you wear, and it's serving its purpose really well, but you just have to make sure you're careful not to lose yourself in it. Right before you enter room 422, the cat will say, "Knowing your shadow can greatly help you, but be ready to see what you'd rather not be." Entering room 422 will have you walk through a red hallway, and then you will be chased by the Wall of Flesh. The Wall of Flesh will immediately kill you if it happens to catch up to you, and its rooms are very labyrinthian in nature, with a lot of dead ends that can trip you up really fast. Other than that, though, there is really not too much to talk about with the specimen, as you not even receive a death screen when it does happen to catch you, and instead will just be sent back to the title screen. And yeah, their area may have a lot of dead ends, but if you can keep up the speed, you should not have too much to worry about. And yeah, the music's really cool in this segment, and the intro beforehand is really cool, but there really isn't too much to say about this specimen. Specimen 8, the Deer Lord. A demonic deer figure wearing a long black coat with antlers that will appear starting in room 558. This specimen will appear after a brief forest area that is filled with deer that are not friendly. You will also be getting the axe here as well. While being chased by the Deer Lord, he will affect your vision and utter phrases at you the entire time. You will also notice that he will open his cloak whenever he gets close to you that will reveal faces screaming from within. Deer Lord is another specimen that can float, so he will be extra dangerous in the abyss rooms. The Deer Lord also has a cool mechanic where if there's a wall between you and them, they will just teleport to you immediately. And it will be instantaneous because no matter how far away you are, they will reach you in about a second. This can make the Deer Lord very deadly, especially in rooms where there's a lot of walls or those rooms where you have to loop around on itself to get to the door. He can instantaneously reach you in these rooms and very quickly lower your health. The death screen is very cool, I will say, for the Deer Lord. Once your health is depleted, you will be brought to a forest with a red fog. You can maneuver around this area, but ultimately you'll have no choice but to approach the specimen at the end of the path, where the screen will flash and this text will appear. And I saw from eyes that were not mine, and I felt with a fear that I could not reason. They watch us, they invade us, and keep us happy, committing treason. To a king we didn't deserve, to a son who waits weeping, that I knew from knowledge gained while sleeping. Overall, the Deer Lord is a very cool specimen from their appearance to their death screen, and it is a very tense situation whenever they show up on the rechases. Specimen 9. I will go over Specimen 9 in a lot more detail after the rest of the specimens, for a reason that you will understand when we approach the end of the game. Specimen 10. The Parasite. This specimen is encountered in room 617. It is a parasitic being that bursts out of the old Specimen 10. Cat Doss states that this creature is believed to be an extraterrestrial. And yeah, to address the elephant in the room, there used to be an old Specimen 10, but it was patched out and replaced with what we have now, and personally, I think that was a good choice. The old Specimen 10 was kind of lame in design and chase. Honestly, it didn't even have a death screen. But the new Specimen 10 is a lot more interesting visually and in its chase. Specimen 10 has a few forms that it can take. It has a closed form, which is its initial stage. This has really nothing too much special going on for it. It has an open form as well, which will occur when it gets closer to you. This form is slightly faster, And then finally, the form that really sets this specimen apart from the others is the worm form that it will take once you have gotten too far away from it. That's right. Unlike before, where your best option more often than not, aside from specimen 6 of course, was to book it as fast as you can, this specimen will punish you for it. This form is much faster than your sprint, and it will catch up to you, closing the distance between you and it pretty fast. This form is also something that is hinted at throughout the notes in the area as well. This will essentially make it to where you have to walk with the specimen essentially, and slowing your pace down. This can be a bit frustrating on rechases as you are now forced to slow down, but I think it's a nice change of pace personally. Whenever Specimen 10 hits you, a yellow substance will start to cover the screen, and the lower your health gets, the more of it will appear on the screen and encroach upon the screen. Its death screen will have your screen flash with this text followed up shortly afterwards. Now you have nothing to fear, now you have nothing to think. Follow your selfish desires, follow your natural instinct. After all, you're just an animal. It's much easier than trying to think. Essentially showing that the parasite has taken over your body. But you'll also see a flash of binary that translates to, you are more than just an animal. Use the soul you've been given and be responsible for your actions. A lot of people have theorized that this is the last remnant of your conscience, essentially fighting back the parasite, which is ultimately unsuccessful. A very cool specimen, however, this specimen can be a little frustrating on the rechases. Specimen 11, the Food Demon, is encountered in room 710. A red demonic creature that has long claws and horns with fire in between the horns. This creature appears in a place that looks like a fast food restaurant. I knew that unhealthy living would get to me eventually. But he will make his appearance after going through the restaurant segment and getting the key from the freezer. The entire time you are walking around, you will be finding notes about a new employee's time at the restaurant where they will detail that the place is doing very well despite news of the company's financial struggles last week, but show some hesitation around the food in the place. They will continue to document the weird findings in the restaurant, from people ordering a lot of food to just come back 10 minutes later, to management forcing employees to eat the food for lunch, with a member of management shoving an employee's head onto the grill once they did bring food in, and after the employee stated that the burgers smelt like sulfur. After the employee ate one of the burgers, they started to experience weird dreams about the restaurant itself. It ends with them quitting after falling asleep in a car and getting brief flashes of a man or animal coming towards them. The overall setup for the Food Demon is really interesting to read through, and the entire restaurant area is very fascinating to walk through, especially like the little kids' play area. But the chase with this specimen is also very harrowing as well, as it can float, go through the walls, speed up when it gets near you, is pretty fast, easily matching just your walking speed alone, will send out random hallucinations, and the real kicker, he can make the doors invisible, making it much more difficult to escape into another room. All of these things combined makes for a pretty dangerous foe as you run room to room. This guy can also show up for rechases as well, so you will not just be facing him the one time. If he does manage to get you, you will not be met by a screen. Instead, you'll be teleported to a room, just like the Dear Lord, a room that has meat on the wall, by the way. After making your way through this room, you will see the Food Demon at the end, where approaching him will flash his death screen with this text. With every bite, with bone and skin, the temple groaned and shook again. His dwelling place did I neglect, to the end with bad effect. There will also be a flash of binary that will translate to believe in God, but question the teachings of man, which is kind of an odd message. Your environmental awareness will be tested with a specimen, making it a very stressful specimen to face, especially if they show up for rechases, as you'll have to have a very good understanding of the rooms that you are in order to successfully evade this guy. Specimen 12. Where to begin with this one? So starting at room 810, you will enter a Victorian mansion. A mansion inside a mansion. Wow. Walking around, you will notice that some of the doors are locked, and you'll be required to unlock these doors in order to progress. While looking for the keys, you will find notes from someone else that was also surprised to see a mansion within a mansion, but notes that everything seems fake and keeps hearing voices from below. And then you will also find a note stating that they needed to hide. But from who? Now, unlike in the past where you would need to run, you will instead need to hide from this old man, as he will kill you in one hit. And he will leave keys once he leaves the rooms allowing you to progress. You will need to do this a few times in the mansion before entering a cellar/basement-like area with skeletons in it, by the way, quite a bit of them, where you will find the exit key. After hiding again, you will attempt to leave only to be chased by the man with the large sickle. After successfully evading him and leaving, you will be out of the mansion. Now, while the old man will continue to chase you outside the mansion, the actual Specimen 12 was the mansion the whole time. The old man was actually just being controlled by the mansion, and the last note you find in the area will sort of give this info away. I have a theory. I think it's this pseudo mansion. I think it's playing with my head. I still hear him. I must find that man and kill him with the sickle I found in the forest. Now, the old man does use a sickle. He is currently being a host for the specimen to kill whoever enters the mansion. The Cat DOS entry will confirm this, stating that the specimen will choose a host to possess and attack subjects. The area of the mansion is a nice change of pace where you hide instead of bolting/moving away from whatever creature is chasing after you. But the old man on reach is too much to write home about. Specimen 13, the mermaid. This specimen will be encountered in room 910, with her segment even being a reference to Amnesia the Dark Descent, with the lantern even being used in this segment as well. In the room beforehand, you will see a note stating to never open the door with the key that you are about to open. Once you enter the room, you will see a womanly figure with gray hair, and when you approach her, she will dive into the water and begin the chase. She will chase after you whenever you are in the water, but cannot reach you if you are on the crates. So it quickly becomes a situation where you must run from crate to crate and not spend too much time in the water. She is very fast in the water, and you are slowed while you are in the water, so trying to outrun her will not work. She is always on the move, too, so you will have to time your sprints from box to box carefully and avoid getting snagged in the process. A scary specimen to face off against for sure. Her death screen will show her hair-covered face with bubbles appearing on screen, showing that she is actively drowning you. It will then flash and show her true face. I don't really have too much to talk about this specimen. Cool specimen overall, even if it doesn't quite scare me like the others. Her area is a nice change of pace, as you will have to lower the water levels in the rooms as you go along with them. Alright, now with all the other specimens out of the way, I will now go a little bit deeper into Specimen 9, the Taker. Now, this is the only specimen that can kill you in any room, excluding a few specific instances like the arcades or a note-heavy room or the Cat DOS rooms. Even the first 60 floors they can get you, where you would normally not encounter any hostile specimens. And the reason for this being that this specimen will attack you if you are idle in one room for too long. The Taker will also have their own special rooms throughout the mansion, where you will encounter a long hallway, and no matter how long you walk on the hallway, you'll never reach the end, with the walls slowly encroaching in on you, to a point where you'll inevitably not be able to move, and the Taker will kill you. Other than that, the specimen does not show up until the very end of the game. Normally, after reaching room 1000, you will see an exit door. After walking through it, you will be outside, or at least that is what it looks like. Shortly after you enter this area, the sky will show an error message and Spooky will appear and will give you your final test, and then another door will pop up. Entering this door takes you into a white hallway with a radio at the end that will start talking about taking all of the logs that they keep throwing out and nailing them together. After walking around a bit more, you will enter a door with the number 731 on it. This is a reference to Unit 731, which was a Japanese unit that performed horrendous experiments on prisoners of war during World War II. After this segment, you will be greeted with Specimen 9's death screen, but instead of being sent back to the main menu like you normally would, you will instead see it morph into a humanoid figure, and you will be placed into a large square room with him. It seems like the final test Spooky has for you is to kill Specimen 9 with your axe. This fight overall is pretty straightforward though. While he's floating to the air, he will summon screaming pillars, summon a row of hands, and summon some extra guys that you can cut down. He will inevitably shoot off fireballs that you can hit back, Legend of Zelda style. Once he is hit with one of those, he will lower and you will be given the chance to strike. You will then rinse and repeat this process until you inevitably take him out, where one of two endings will play out depending on how often you use your axe so far in your run. With there being a good ending for not using it very often, where you are crushed by the ceiling and will become a ghost in Spooky's army, Whereas if you used it too much, you would instead get the bad ending, where Spooky turns into a specimen that wields the axe instead. Overall, Specimen 9 is a very interesting specimen. It isn't the scariest looking, but it is kind of crazy how he can appear at any point in time if you meet the right criteria. Boss fight's pretty interesting, pretty basic for the most part, but I had fun with it. And that about covers all specimens, and essentially the main story of the game as well, as the original game really just revolved around reaching room 1000 without dying. There is a bit of background as well if you want to look into it regarding Spooky, but overall that's the main premise of the game. The game is very fun, and while there were a few specimens I would consider not as scary, the tension was definitely palpable the entire run through. And real quick, I will list them all off based on how much they scared me personally, starting from worst to best, not including Specimen 12, 9, or 1, as they are more or less set pieces without a dedicated chase. But starting off the list, starting off with Specimen 3, while having a very cool death screen, I will say, I just wasn't really scared by this one. I don't really have a fear of arachnids or bugs, really, so it just didn't do much for me personally. And like I said earlier, I personally found it cute, which really diminished the fear factor for me. Specimen 7. While the instant death is a really scary aspect of the specimen, and I like the idea of it, the chase itself is pretty minimalistic. He can be pretty easily avoided as long as you don't get tripped up in the labyrinth. But I will say the intro to this specimen is a very cool part of the game. Specimen 13, having to run around in the water while she chases you definitely puts my hairs on end for sure. But as long as you're able to get from crate to crate, you should be fine. Overall, didn't really give me too much of a hassle. Specimen 2. For the first real chase of the game, the specimen does the job very well. And it can put you on edge with its green puddles that will slow you down, especially on the rechases when it kind of comes out of nowhere. But other than that, there's really not too much to say about the specimen. Does a very good job for what he's supposed to be doing. Specimen 5, or Bab. Her hallucinations can really mess with your sense of direction and trip you up if you are not being careful. She is pretty slow, so it isn't too difficult to avoid her. However, I do think her design is pretty scary looking, and the giant blade definitely does not help. And the homage to Silent Hill is very appreciated. Specimen 10, or the Parasite. The Parasite will force you to change your strategy quite a bit, because you'll no longer be allowed to just sprint to the next room, as a worm form will easily catch up with you. Other than that, not too scary looking, and can get a little frustrating on the rechases. Specimen 4, or Ringu. Her starting area in the school is really effective and had me on edge the moment I was in there, with Ringu having a pretty unsettling appearance as well, as she is a reference to Corpse Party. Overall, very scary looking specimen, pretty easy to outrun, but her appearance does unsettle me quite a bit. Specimen 11, the Food Demon. So these next two specimens are pretty interchangeable for me. They both scare me just about the same, just depending on my mood. One will get me better than the other. But for now, I'll go ahead and put Food Demon here. So the Food Demon can erase doors, which is plenty to boost his rating in my book, as he can really disorient you out of nowhere. He can also phase through walls, float, and will speed up once he gets close. Pairing all these together really makes for a terrifying foe, and I cannot stress how often him moving the doors or making the doors disappear really disoriented me as I went through the mansion. Specimen 8, the Deer Lord. Very cool design. I like how they look. And the constant dialogue that it spouts while chasing you put me on edge essentially the entire time I was being chased by them. Its death scream is also very unsettling, with it taking you into that forest where you have to walk towards it. And the teleporting that it can do also kept me on my toes. It basically forces you to kite them around the corners and not sprint as much, as they can easily catch up with you. Overall, very cool specimen. And to round out the list, we will have Specimen 6 or Ben the Merchant. And yeah, I know that this will probably be an unpopular choice considering just how scary some of the other specimens are in comparison, but hear me out. Ben the Merchant really struck a chord with me. They essentially brought a childhood fear of mine to life, and it was really effective. Pairing that with him attacking while you are not looking at him, and the specimen easily was the scariest one for me in the main game personally. His death screen is also pretty famous, and I have seen a lot of people check this game out just because they happen to see that screen, making Specimen 6 one of the more infamous specimens of the game, and just a really scary specimen to me overall. Now, I know this list will more likely be different from yours, and that's okay. This game does a really good job at accentuating multiple fears that people would have, while also drawing inspiration from many places of horror, from blockbuster movies like Aliens to more niche avenues like the Ben Drown creepypasta. Overall, this game really is a gem, and if you hadn't had the chance to check it out yet, I definitely would. The room-to-room gameplay can be very addictive, so much so that they went ahead and added an endless mode to the game, which will allow you to run to your heart's content and see just how far you can make it before dying. There are also new specimens in this mode as well. They have also released some new DLC for the game, titled Karamari Hospital and Spooky Stallhouse, that flesh out the story of Spooky and basically who she is, while also providing new scares. And it's a really good part of the game that I would easily recommend checking out as well. I will not be doing a deep dive into those in its current state, however, but hey, if people like this, I wouldn't mind going over them at some point in time as well. Just let me know in the comment section. And that is all. Thank you everybody for watching. Please do all the things people ask you to do, like, comment, and subscribe. Spooky's House of Jump Scares, or Jumpscare Mansion, my bad, is a special little darling that I think more people should check out and talk about. So I just wanted to throw my voice into that. Please be on the lookout for more videos from me. You can check out my last video on Resident Evil 4 Remake. I also plan on doing a Legend of Zelda retrospective and then a giant deep dive into Fallout New Vegas. So please keep an eye out for that, and thank you for watching.